Bruchim haboim. Welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem together on Daf Mem Amud Beis, the fourth line from the top. The Gemara previously explained the prohibition against bathing on Shabbos with water that was heated up before Shabbos. Initially, it was permissible to bathe on water in hot water that was heated up before Shabbos. However, since the Balonim, the attendants of the bathhouses, began heating up water on Shabbos. Now, they didn't actually heat up, as we explained last time, on Shabbos, but rather they heated up enough fuel before Shabbos that would be heated on Shabbos. So the Chachamim Aser, they prohibited water that was heated up before Shabbos to bathe in. However, they said a person can still bathe in what's called a steam bath. They can have zayah by sitting in such a bathhouse and being sweat from the heat of the bathhouse. Subsequently, people then took actual baths, claiming that they only did zayah, and therefore the Chachamim asered even zayah. But they permitted taking baths in Chamei Tveria, in the hot springs of Tveria. People subsequently bathed in the regular baths, claiming that they bathed in hot springs of Tveria. So the Chachamim asered even the hot springs of Tveria and said the only thing that is permissible is cold water. They saw that the Tzibur cannot be oimei, were not able to then withstand this gzeira, so they permitted even hot springs on Shabbos. The Gemara now discusses various aspects of bathing in hot water, even that was heated up before Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanon, Mischamem Adam Keneged HaMedura, V'yoytzei Umishtatef B'tsoinen. The Brisa says that a person can heat himself up before a fire by standing in front of a fire, and subsequently he can go and rinse himself off with cold water. And we're not worried that that cold water is going to be considered to be heated up on Shabbos. Ubilvad, providing shelo yishtatef b'tsoinen v'yischamen keneged hamedura mipnei shemafshir mayim she'alov. Providing that he didn't do the opposite by first rinsing himself off with water, and then subsequently standing in front of a hot fire, whereby that would then heat up the water that was on his person, and that would then seem similar to somebody who is bathing in hot water. Tonu Rabbanan, the Gemara now brings another brisa, Meicham Adam at Lointis Umenich al Bnei Me'ayim b'Shabbos. A person can heat up a towel and he can place it on his stomach. A person has some sort of stomach ailment, a stomach ache, and he wants to soothe his stomach. So he can take that towel, heat it up in front of a hot source like a fire, then place the hot towel on his stomach. Ubilvad shelo yavi kumkumus shel mayim chamim v'yanichena al bnei me'ayim b'Shabbos. Providing that he doesn't bring a hot kettle and place that on his stomach on Shabbos. Either because maybe the kettle will then pour out hot water, it'll be like bathing on Shabbos. Some learn because if the alontis, if the towel is still there, it will then pour onto this towel, whereby he'll then be over schita by then wringing out the water that was poured onto this towel. Nonetheless, the Gemara adds, "V'davar ze afilu bechol aser mipnei hasakana." Regardless of Shabbos, even during the week, this is prohibited because it's a sakana. If a person puts a hot kettle on his stomach, he can endanger himself, and therefore that is aser. Tanu Rabban, the Gemara is another brisa. Maybe adam kito in mayim. A person can bring a flask of water, umeinichoy keneged hamedura, and he can place it in front of the fire. Lo bishvil sheyichamu, elo bishvil shetofik tzinoson. Not in order to then heat up the water, but just to take off some of the cold from that cold water that's in the flask. Rabbi Yehuda argues, and he says, "Mevia isha pach shel shemen umenichasa keneged hamedura lo bishvil sheyivashel elo bishvil sheyifasher." Rabbi Yehuda says in regards to oil, a person can take a flask of oil and you can place it in front of a fire, not in order to then cook the oil, but rather just to then warm it up. So this is parallel to the Tana Kama who was speaking about water. Here, Rabbi Yehuda says one can warm up oil. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel Oimer Isha Sacha Yada Shemen. She can rub oil on her skin. Umechamto Keneged Hamedura, and she can then get heated up in front of a fire. V'sacha livna katan. She can also rub oil on her son. Ve'ena choshesh, it's not concerned whatsoever. Now the Gemara now gets into the brisa. What is the Havana of this brisa? Iboi lohu. The Gemara asks, Shemen mahu l'Tana Kama. What does the Tana Kama hold in regards to Shem? We only saw that the Tana Kama said when regards to water, a person can take a flask of water, he can put it near a fire in order to warm it up but not to cook it. What about in regards to oil? Does he agree with Rabbi Yehuda or does he argue on Rabbi Yehuda? So there's two different opinions. Rabbi Yosef de Amri Travayu Lehetera. Rabbi Yosef they both say that the Tana Kama is matir, just like Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amra li Isura. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak says that indeed he was asering the oil. Let's explain. Rabbi Rav Yosef Damar Travay Lehetera, that the Tana Kama would hold its mutter by Shemen. Shemen Avisha Hayad Soledes boy. Mutter. He said even if the yad would be Soledes boy, that means that even if it would be in regards to water, it would be considered to be cooking. But in regards to oil, yad soles means that the hand would recoil because of the heat. So if it got to such a heat of yad soledes boy, it would be mutter when it comes to oil. Kesover Tanakam shemen ein bo mishum bishul, because shemen is not considered to be mevushal. In other words, that shemen doesn't change its content, its tsura when it gets heated up, unlike water. And therefore, when it comes to water, water, when it's heated up, it would be bishul. But shemen that's heated up would not be considered to be bishul, because it doesn't change its form. Whereas Rabbi Yehuda says, no, if it was heated up where it was actually cooked, then the shemen is considered mevushal. If it was just warmed up, then it's not considered to be a problem of mevushal by shemen. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel lemeimar shemen yesh boy mishum bishul vehefshero zu bishulo. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel is machmir, and he says even the warming up of shemen is considered to be an aspect of bishul. That's the opinion of Rabbi and Rav Yosef, who explain the Tana Kama as being mekil in regards to shemen. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar li Isura. They said that he's coming to be oiser, as it follows: Shemen afal pisha ein hayad soledes boy oser. Shemen, even though the yad is not soledes boy, doesn't get so hot that the hand has to recoil, even that is oser. Kesover shemen yesh bo mishum bishul vehefsheiru zel bishulo, because the Tana Kama holds that even just warming up shemen is considered to be bishul. Unlike water, where water has to actually be heated up, just to warm up water would not be a problem. It had to be heated up till yad soledes bo, according to Tana Kama. Ve'oser Rabbi Yehuda lemeimar hifshiru zlo zehu bishuloi. Rabbi Yehuda says no, that just to warm up the shemen, that's not considered to be bishul. It has to be it actually has to be heated up itself, not just to be warmed up. Ve'oser Rabbi Shimon Gamliel lemeimar shemen yesh bo mishum bishul vehefsheiru zehu bishuloi. And Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says that the warming up of shemen, that itself is its bishul. So ask the Gemara the following question, the obvious question. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel hainu Tana Kama, that's the same opinion. We also saw that the Tana Kama over here, according to this, holds that if you're just warming up the oil, it also is considered to be bishul. Yet Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says the same thing. So ask the Gemara, Rabbi Shimon Gamliel hainu Tana Kama. Answers the Gemara, Ika beinaihu. Kol achar yad. If it's done with a shinui, according to Tanakama, even al yidei a shinui, it would be considered to be prohibited, aser. Whereas according to Shem Gamliel, if it's with the shinui, it's mutter, and that's why he said the lashon of ein boy mishum bishul ve'efshei zehu bishuloi, and he said you don't have to worry about it whatsoever. I'm sorry, the lashon of Shem Gamliel was v'sacha livna katan ve'eino choshes, and you don't have to be concerned whatsoever because with a shinu it wouldn't be a problem whatsoever. Ve'oster Rabbi Yehuda lemeimar. Sorry, Amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. Now the Gemara brings an Amora that gives a psak halacha on what we just saw in the Brisa. Echad shemen ve'echad mayim yad soledes boy oser. Ein yad soledes boy muter. Whether it's water or whether it's oil, if it gets to the temperature of yad soledes boy, again, where a person's hand would be recoiled because it's so hot, that's considered to be bishul. Again, whether it's water or oil, if it doesn't get to that point, then it's not considered to be bishul. So ask the Gemara, so what is considered to be that a hand recoils? It's subjective. So some people it's considered to be a higher temperature, and other people a lower temperature. What's considered yad soledes, but the person's hands would recoil. When a child's stomach would become burned, that is considered to be this yad soledes bo, and therefore that would be considered to be bishul, again, whether it's water or oil on Shabbos. One time I followed Rebbe into the Beis HaMerchatz, Rabbi Yehuda Nosi. And I requested to place a flask of oil inside of this hot tub. So we're talking about a Chamei Tveria, which why it was permissible for Rebbe to bathe in this Chamei Tveria, and Rav Yisrael bar Avdimi wanted to take a flask of oil and put it inside to warm up the oil. V'amar li, he said to me, toil b'chli sheni v'tein. He said, take it, the flask of oil, and then put it into a kli sheni, and then you could go ahead and do so. Shma mina tlas. I learned from this three things, three different halachos. Shma mina shemen yesh boy mishum bishul. First of all, I learned that shemen has bishul. Vishma mina kli sheni einoi mevashel. The second thing I learned was that kli sheni does not mevashel. Unlike the ambatya, which was a kli rishon, he told me to put the oil into a kli sheni, and therefore it's not mevashel. Vishma mina hefsheru zeu bishuloi. Even warming up the oil is considered to be a problem of bishul, and therefore that's prohibited. The three things that I learned from Rebbe. Ask the Gemara, Heichi Avid Hachi, how could Rebbe give him this haira in a bathhouse? It's prohibited to speak divrei Torah and even think divrei Torah in a bathhouse. V'omar Rabba Barachana Rabbi Yochanan b'kol makom muter lihirhur leharher chutz mi beis hamercha to beis hakisei. He asks, however, we see that Rabbi Yochanan paskin that it's also to her head and mahaher to think of divrei Torah in a bathhouse or a beis hakisei. So again, how did Rebbe instruct Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi and give him over these halachos, even though Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi inferred three different halachos, but he still said to him, Tol b'kli sheni v'tein. And therefore, how was he able to give him such a haira in the Beis HaMerchatz? Answers the Gemara, v'chiteim b'lashon chol. The Gemara asks, v'chiteim, and you want to suggest b'lashon chol amar lei, that he told him b'lashon chol, and therefore it would be mutter. V'amar Abaye, dvarim shel chol mutter la'armam b'lashon hakodesh. Shel kodesh asur la'armam b'lashon chol. Even things that are mutter That's only things that are mutter, then you can say in Lashon HaKodesh, but Lashon HaKodesh, which is Divrei Torah, you can't say even by Lashon Chol. So that wouldn't be an answer. So again, why did Rebbe, or how was Rebbe permitted to then say this halacha in the Beis HaMerchatz? Answers the Gemara, Ifrushe mi isura shiny. To prevent a person from doing an Isser is permissible to say a halacha. Teidan, I'll bring you a proof. The Omar Rav Yehuda Omar Shmuel, the following precedent. Maise betalmido she Rebbe Meir. There was a Maise of the student of Rebbe Meir, shenichnas acharov lebeis hamerchatz, who entered to the Beis HaMerchatz after Rebbe Meir. Ubikesh lo hadiach karka. He wanted to clean down the floor for Rebbe Meir, so he wanted to wash it off. V'amar lo, Rebbe Meir said to him, Ein meidichin, you're not allowed to wash the floor. Meaning to say, there's a problem of shema yashve gumois. You might then straighten out the floor that might have different holes in it and be over an Isser of boine, an Isser deraisa on Shabbos. So then he said, okay, lo such lo karka, at least if I cannot then wash the floors for Rebbe Meir, at least let me mechabed him by then putting oils on the floors. Amar lo ein sachin. Again, Rebbe Meir says you cannot do that. Again, for the same reason, because you might be mashve gumos, you might equate, you might smooth out the ground, which has holes, and that would be an Isser of boine. Alma ifrusha misura shiny. Obviously, we see from this incident that to prevent somebody from being over an Isser is permissible to give a hayrah, even a Beis HaMerchatz. Hachanami li'ifrushe misuroi shiny. So too, in this case, to then prevent somebody from doing an Isser, in this case, preventing Rav Yitzchak bar Avdimi from doing an Isser was permissible. Omar Ravina said, Shma mina hamevashil b'chamei teveri b'Shabbos chayav. We can derive from this that a person who cooks in Chamei Tiveria, in the hot springs of Tiveria, is chayiv. Because over here, it was Rebbe that instructed him to then put into a klisheni, so it's not mevashel. The whole ma'aseh Rebbe, la'achar gezerah havo, v'amalei tol b'klisheni v'tein. So you see over here that it's indeed also. Ask the Gemara, Eini, is this so? That indeed it's going to be a chayiv achatos, v'omar Rav Chizda mevasher b'chamei Tiveria b'Shabbos potter. That person who cooks in Chamei Tiveria, because Chamei Tiveria is heat up by the sun, it's a tolda dechama, so it's an Isser d'Rabbanan to bathe to cook in such a heat, and therefore it's potter aval aser midrabanan, but it's not chayiv achatos, it's not chayiv midiraisa, because only that which is heat up by fire or a tolda of eish is going to be chayiv midiraisa. This is a tolda chama. The Gemara is assuming, like the opinion that we learn on Amud Aleph, that the Chamei Tiveria is heated up by the sun and not by a fire. My chayiv nami dekamar. So what was his intention when he said chayav? Makas mardus, his chayiv, he's obligated to get malkis derabanan. That's what he meant when he said chayiv. Om Rabbi Zeiro ana chazisei l'Rebbe Abohu deshat bambati. Rabbi Zeiro says that I saw Rabbi Abohu, who was in an ambati. He was shot in an ambati. Shot means that he was bathing in an ambati, and he was swimming in an ambati. I didn't know whether he lifted up his feet from the ground or not. Pshita deloy okar. The Gemara says it's pashut that he wasn't oiker, that he didn't then lift up his feet from the ground. The Tanya, because it says in the Brisa, lo yashut adam bivreicha melea mayim va'afilo omedes bechotzer. A person cannot swim in a pool of water, even if that pool of water is found in a chotzer. Not only if it's not in a chotzer, because there's a concern that if he splashes the water out into the Rishus HaRabim, that would be an Isser. But even if he was actually in a chotzer, where it's all one Rishus HaRab, Rosh Rishus HaYachid, nonetheless it's Asr, because maybe he will then make a raft. The Gemara says, lo kasha. It's not a difficulty to understand why he wasn't sure whether he picked up his foot or not, because the less legidude That which it says that it's us in the Brisa is talking when there is no gidude, when there's nothing that's surrounding the pool of water. There's not a higher embankment. But this that he had a question about when he saw that indeed Rabbi Abo was swimming in the bathtub, he didn't know because there, if he picked up his legs or not, because there it did not have an embankment. And therefore he had a question whether this is mutter or not. And indeed, it did have an embankment and therefore it was indeed mutter.